When you find yourself in the potential path of a hurricane, do you know how to ready your boat? Preparing your boat properly for a major storm can give it its best chance. I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley podcast, I'll do two things. I'll give you a link to get a download editable version of a hurricane checklist, so you've got a list of everything you need to do. You have to, of course, change it up for what you want. But then I'll give you all of the best tips that I've learned in surviving two direct hits by hurricanes. This episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by Fast Seas. Plan your next passage using fastseas.com. Whether you're after speed or comfort, Fast Seas will find the optimum route to your destination. Fast Seas makes weather routing simple, and use coupon code GALLEY2018 for an exclusive 10% discount. Okay, the editable checklist is listed in the show notes. There's a link to it. Sign up, download it, and then edit it to be correct for your boat. Don't go by what works for my boat. You have to look and think about your boat. But I do want to talk today about preparing for a hurricane in general. Now, this is all done from the perspective of a boat that's going to be anchored during a storm. But most of it is equally applicable if you're on a mooring ball at a dock or if you're hauled out. Okay, there's two primary rules. First is assume the worst. Assume that the storm will turn and hit you directly. Assume that the storm will speed up as it travels towards you. Assume it will stall while you're in the worst of it. Don't try to outthink the storm. Pick the very best hurricane hole you can and over-prepare. While you're being pummeled by the eye wall or pushed onto the beach, you don't want to be thinking, if only I'd done such and such. You want to give everything you can from the outset. And the second rule, prepare early. Remember that when a forecaster predicts a storm will be in your area, he's predicting the center of the storm. Winds, wave, and rain will be at storm force long before then. Gale force winds usually extend out over 100 miles from the center of a hurricane. So, if a storm is 300 miles away from you and moving at 20 knots, you could be in a gale in just 10 hours. And once winds are at gale force, you can't do much more to prepare for the storms. Remember, hurricanes can speed up dramatically. Now, if you're going to be cruising in a hurricane area, there's several things to do before hurricane season even starts. First is your weather information. Learn where to get the best possible weather information while on board your boat, whether it's on television, radio, internet, VHF, single sideband or ham nets, weather facts, or an email service even. Once hurricane season begins, monitor the weather every single day. Also before hurricane season, investigate your hurricane holes. What are the pros and cons of each one? If possible, spend a night or two and see what the holding's like. What anchor works best? Is there anything you have to watch for as you enter the anchorage? If you're hurrying for a hurricane hole, you'll feel a lot better entering an anchorage you've been in before. Create your checklist. Now that's what I am giving you the bare bones of, but take an afternoon and fully develop it for preparing for a hurricane. Plan where your sails and other deck items will be stored. Is there anything that you need to get out of lockers first? I remember my frustration in discovering that all of our canned food and chafe gear were in the locker under the sails and dinghy. Okay, grab that list and start working on it. Also, before the hurricane season, plan your storm anchoring. Spend some time reading any of the various excellent reference books on storm anchoring and buy any extra equipment you need. Prepare your chafe gear. This is one of the most important things. Your lines can only hold you if they stay intact. And buy any other supplies that you'll need. Once the storm is predicted, the stores are going to be crowded, swamped, and everything will be sold out. Get things now. Okay, let's talk about preparing for the storm. This is where having your checklist will really pay off. You won't have to try to think of what you need to do. You just go down the list. Now, some general things that we've learned. Use your time wisely. Start preparing the boat on the way to the hurricane hole. If you're motoring, maybe you can start taking your sails down. Canvas like your Bimini and Dodger can be taken down. Run the water maker and fill the tanks if that's an issue. Rig your jack lines. Secure items below. If any lockers leak in heavy seas, see if you can relocate items that could possibly be damaged. For example, we put a lot of our reference books in dry bags and stored them on the floor under a table. If you're going to be aboard, be sure to prepare your ditch bag. Don't spend your time on non-essential tasks. Now start by laying out things you'll need so that you don't block access to them. Food, life jackets, jack lines, harnesses, snorkel masks, warm clothes. Those are all if you're going to be on the boat. I don't recommend staying on the boat, but sometimes there isn't anywhere safe ashore. That happened to us in 2003. You also want your chafe gear, brand new snubbers, extra lines, anything else you're going to need. Your food. Make sure your tools are where you can get to them easily. Have several waterproof flashlights available if you're going to be aboard. Okay, now, if you're anchoring, the first priority, and I mean first priority, is to anchor well. If you're using a mooring, dive on it to make sure it's large enough and doesn't need repair. Follow your ground tackle plan and make sure your anchor is well set. Power back on it as hard as you can. The storm is going to generate far more force than your engine possibly can. If you drag now, you won't stay put through the storm. Okay? Go back hard. If you're going to be at a dock, plan how you're going to tie off and how you're going to protect the boat from crashing into the dock. Securing your boat is the highest priority. Number 2 is taking all of your sails down if you've got a sailboat. It's absolutely crucial. Sails are designed to sail. Simply tying them off, hurricane force winds will pull them out, will start the boat sailing, and you're going to either break the docks apart or you will break the lines attaching your boat to the dock or to your anchor. It's better to spend half a day putting your sails back on after a storm has passed you by with nothing more than gale force winds than to spend a week figuring out how you're going to get your boat off the beach. In particular, roller furling jibs and mains have to be taken off. Next is get everything below decks that you can. You want to take down the canvas, your empty jerry cans. We leave the full ones on board because we don't want fuel below. Reducing your windage will significantly reduce the strain on your ground tackle or dock lines. There's also less chance you'll lose items, but the big thing is that you don't want the force on your boat. Okay, let's talk about your dinghy. The very best place for your dinghy is down below or in a secure building ashore with the motor stowed as you would for passage. If you have an inflatable dinghy and don't have room for it below, deflate it and tie it down as securely as possible. Some boats with hard dinghies have tied them on deck as they would for a passage. Others have sunk them and tied the painter to their boats or put a fender on it as a buoy, a marker. If you're going to be aboard, keep the interior safe for people and pets. The boat is going to roll gunnel to gunnel during a storm. If you stow sails and other heavy gear below, don't put it where things can slide or fall and hit someone or a pet. Even as you're getting ready for things, leave a place to sit and to sleep. You need this. You need room for yourself. Be sure to tie off all your lines and sheets so they don't become whips in the air and do further damage. That's what I'm going to concentrate on for today. Absolutely, you want to protect your boat as best you can. It is up to you to give it the best possible chance to survive the storm. Have that checklist. It will make it 10 times easier to prepare if you have thought about it ahead of time and written it down so you just have to look and do. No thinking, just doing. I hope that you found this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast helpful. I don't mean to scare the crap out of you about having a storm hit, but the reality is In most cruising gowns, they are a possibility, and you need to be prepared. Please, if you find this useful, tell your friends. Give them a copy of that checklist. Talk to them about what's going on, and you might even want to suggest that they start listening to our podcast.